Hey one, hey all, it is Monday. You know what that means here on the channel. It is countdown day. And today we're going to be looking at the transformers that have alt modes that aren't vehicle modes. Something else, something other than a vehicle mode. That's going to be our focus this time around in the latest GotBot Counts Down. Hey one, hey all, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, your most humble of hosts, Dennis Moulton, aka GotBot. As always, man, please a like, comment, share, of course, subscribe while you're at it, loud of my baby. And hit that notification bell, please. It helps me out a ton. It lets you know when content of all sorts goes up here on the channel. Check out Machinery of Man, The Everything Factor, all the groups that I'm either a mod or an admin for, as well as all of my social media links, also in the description. And if you're in a position to help the channel to grow, you will be able to find the donation link. You can check us out on Patreon. You can see what we offer to you through Teespring, or of course you can hit the join button right here on YouTube, and of course become a channel member, baby. And this is the top 10 transformers with non-vehicular alt modes. Of course, the votes have been collected, they were cast, they've been counted. It's interesting how some of it went. Some of the people that voted took the question, and I understand why they took the question this way, but they took the question as, you know, name an alt mode. So they'd say like dinosaur, or they'd say like pencil, or they'd say like, I don't know, tablet. And I was like, no, a character that has an alt mode that is non-vehicular. So we did have to clear that up a little bit. There were several people who tried to vote after the voting cutoff. It is the same every week. Friday at midnight. We run sometime from Wednesday to Friday at midnight. You gotta get in that window, man, so I can get everything kind of tallied and counted up and together in order to do this, right? I need the time to do it, so that's why we have the Friday at midnight cutoff. And this was an interesting one with a lot of close races along the way. So I'm intrigued with how the voting turned out, and you'll see why as we go through. We're going to kick things off with our honorable mentions, and today we actually have 4 honorable mentions. These 4 all have the exact same number of votes. Optimus Primal, of course, he has a gorilla mode. Then we had Unicron. Unicron is a planet. That's non-vehicular, so I get it. Fort Max, because he has the base mode, though an argument was made that he's also like a spaceship, which is a vehicle. But because he does have that other base mode, I understand why people voted for that. And Metroplex. Again, the dude turns into a city. The argument was made that he does have like that rolling, what's called aircraft carrier. I don't really know what you would call it. I get that. It's not something that we saw very often. Usually he was the city, and so I accepted the vote, but it was with a little bit of a caveat. So those are the honorable mentions, but none of that, absolutely none of it, made the actual final list. So who did? Well, you know what we're going to do, man. We are going to kick things off with number 10 first. And coming in at number 10, much like was the case with some of our offerings in the honorable mentions, we have a character who does definitely have a mode that is non-vehicular, but arguably has another mode that might be vehicular. I'm talking about, if I can get him up, it's a big boy, it's Trypticon. Trypticon, a lot of people said, look, he has a dinosaur mode, that's non-vehicular. He has a city base mode, that's non-vehicular. Now some people said he does have that third mode, which is arguably vehicular. Arguably, this Titan's Return version turns into that Nemesis spaceship. So like, yeah, okay, I get it. He could have a vehicle mode, but I do accept it because he does also have a non-vehicular mode. It's a little bit of an interpretation of the question in a little bit of a questionable way, if you will. And if you prefer and you think this guy should be disqualified because he does have a vehicular mode, this is where you could slide an Optimus Primal and his gorilla mode. I get it. I understand why. 2 out of 3 modes here, non-vehicular. Trypticon, he took the number 10 slot. Now, number 9 really surprised me because I sort of took this guy's alt mode as sort of a vehicle mode, kind of a vehicle mode, but a lot of people said that it wasn't a vehicle mode. And I'll explain it when I present who it is. And who is it? Galvatron. I think this is another questionable one. And by the way, I think this is the last questionable one on the list. Besides that, I think everything else is pretty clear. People said, look, he is either a hand blaster, if you go back to G1, because he could have a hand blaster mode, or he's kind of like this anti-aircraft sort of embankment, even though he has treads and can roll on them. I took it as like a Cybertronian tank, but a lot of people took it as more of a stationary battle embankment, and that's why they voted for him. I think it's a bit wishy-washy. I think it's a bit iffy as to whether or not he would actually count as a vehicle just because he has treads, which brings up a good, debate. Just because something has wheels, is it actually a vehicle? I don't know. I get, again, why some people voted for this guy. Some people even went to the Titan's Return and, said they're like, when he's his cannon mode, like he's stationary. I don't know. I just count up the votes. I get it. Especially if you go with the hand blaster, and especially if you interpret his alt mode as an embankment rather than a tank. I understand why the votes came in. Do I necessarily agree with it? Would it be on my own personal list? I don't think so, but the votes don't lie, and the fans don't lie. And for that reason, Galvatron takes the number 9 slot. Now, number 8 is far more cut and dry. It is G1 Shockwave, represented here by the Siege Shockwave. Ironically, the Siege Shockwave does have a vehicle mode if you do the official transformation to like that spaceship thing. But we all know that the G1 Shockwave does not have a vehicle mode. He is a stationary laser blaster, I guess. It is absolutely not like an alt mode that lends itself to moving. It's not a vehicle. So G1 Shockwave. Ironically, most other versions of this guy are a tank. So that's why we had to specify which iteration. Normally, I kind of just lump all of it together. But this time around, and because of his diverse alt modes, G1 Shockwave is the one with the blaster and the one who took the number 8 slot. Number 7 is a trio of Decepticons. It is Reflector. Now this is one of 3 Siege Reflectors, but we all know that all 3 of them together transform into a camera. Camera is most definitely not a vehicle mode. I know the Siege ones have their like spaceship mode, but we're talking again specifically about G1 Reflector. G1 Reflector did not have a spaceship mode. The 3 guys became 3 parts of a camera. There's another like interesting topic here. Not only is it a non-vehicular mode, but some would argue that that type of a camera is also now an antiquated mode. It's not something that's that's really a part of the world that we live in anymore. That's a debate for another day. But anyway, you cut it. G1 Reflector and his 3 components definitely are non-vehicular, and they took the number 7 slot. And now we're at number 6, man. And at number 6, we have one of the characters that I thought was a lock for one of the top tier spots. It's Perceptor, because of course Perceptor turns into a microscope. Now a couple of people argued and said, well, he does have that weird tank mode thing, and the rumor, the story you hear like in those quiet hallways, in the secret meeting rooms, is that originally in the movie, the 86 movie, he was going to have that like weird tank mode, but that it kind of got cut and he was just given his microscope mode. I don't really know how much truth is to that story, and I would venture to say that I never remember him having that tank mode on the program. I've always interpreted that as like an unofficial hidden mode rather than what he actually turns into. What he actually turns into is a microscope, and enough fans say, robot, microscope, that this guy was able to take, I think rightfully so, the number 6 slot. You have to listen, man, because we are now at the most coveted of locations. We are at the most hallowed of locations, the halfway mark. And at the halfway mark, we have, interestingly, a character that, again, I thought was going to be a lock on the list, but it's not the version of the character that I thought was going to be a lock on the list. Coming in at number 5 is Beast Wars Megatron, and while I'm representing him here this way, number 5 is actually the Dragon version, the Transmetals 2 version of Beast Wars Megatron. A lot of people specifically identified that version, and as of this recording, I don't have any version of that. I don't have the original, and the one that I think is supposed to be coming out in Legacy, or so is leaked and rumored to be coming out in Legacy, as of this recording, isn't a thing yet, because Legacy isn't a thing yet. So I'm just gonna present it with the Kingdom one. It's by Rights the Dragon Megatron. I get it. You know, whether we're talking this one, or the Transmetals one, or the Transmetal 2, like, whether we're talking T-Rex or Dragon, any way you cut it, Beast Wars Megatron, even if you're talking the Grand Mal guy, who is like a big head in Beast Machines. Anyway you cut it, this guy is not a vehicle, and he took the number 5 slot. Coming in on the charts hot at number 4 is Blaster. This is the Titans Return Blaster. This isn't even mine. This one belongs to one of the Scraplets. And like, yeah, whether you take the G1 or the Titans Return, because that's the ones that people voted for, G1 or Titans Return. We know that the Fall of Cybertron version actually does have a vehicle mode, for example. And there was another version, I think in the Universe line, that turned into like this Cybertronian jet. It was based, I believe, on like the Unicron trilogy, maybe Galaxy Force version of Soundwave. So like that's like a spaceship jet thing. We have the Fall of Cybertron one that's like a van thing, but G1 or Titans Return turns into the original like Ghetto Blaster, Boombox, whatever you want to call it. It's the stereo thing that it turns into, right? Which most definitely is not a vehicle mode. It's a recording device. Again, much like Reflector, this might fall under antiquated alt modes. Like, maybe these guys really, you know, kind of did need updates, because their alt modes are technology that's not really a thing anymore. If anything, it might kind of stick out like a sore thumb now. But that being said, traditionally Blaster does have his boombox mode, and for that reason he took the number 4 slot. And as you would probably guess, for number 3, since we had Blaster at 4, Soundwave is of course superior. Same sort of alt mode with the recording device, stereo, handheld, Walkman thing. And again, same sort of criticisms. The Siege one had a ship mode. The FOC turned into like a van type of thing. The G1, the Masterpiece, the Netflix, they all turn into his traditional kind of cassette player type of mode. A lot of other fictions have him as a vehicle. Transformers Prime would have him as that drone plane. He's a van in Cyberverse. So again, this is very, very much a case of G1/Netflix Soundwave. It is very, very specific to a specific Soundwave. But you know what? It makes total sense, because as soon as I thought of non-vehicular modes, along with Perceptor, one of the first ones that came to my mind was indeed Soundwave. And that was the case for a lot of fans, and that's why he took the number 3 spot. I was going to say slot. I was going to say spot. And I put both of them together. Coming in at number 2 is a character who has been depicted as a plane, as a tank, as a helicopter, as a Cybertronian plane, and as his G1 self. It's of course Megatron. And while he has had ever so many alt modes, and when we get to things like Super and Ultra Megatron, he has, you know, planes and tanks and that sort of thing. His original G1 did not turn into any of that. It turned into a firearm that was wielded by another Decepticon, or Optimus Prime that one time. Definitely not a vehicular mode. Definitely not a mode that is mobile in and of itself. Definitely worthy of being on the list. G1 Megatron takes the number 2 slot. And here we are at the top at number 1, and I love this one. I really do. I'm so glad that this guy is number 1. Who is it? It's Grimlock and him king. Look, it's a lot of people, man, far and away voted for Grimlock. At first, several said the Dinobots, and I said, man, no, you guys know better. You can't just say a general group, because not all Dinobots are created equal. I mean, as is the case here, none of his other teammates made it on the list. They all had votes, but none of them actually cracked the list. So Grimlock really stood out far and away from the other members. Yes, dinosaurs are definitely non-vehicular and a great choice, as was a lot of Beast Wars characters. But Grimlock, I think, is just so iconic that that's why everybody sort of gravitates towards him. The definition of non-vehicular alt mode, Grimlock. He took the #1 slot. There you have it, baby. We've gone from 10 down to 1. Once again, I love this countdown. A couple of the ones that were lower down I think are questionable because they could be seen as having vehicular modes, but again, the votes, the votes don't lie. In terms of some of the other characters who got votes, Pterosaur got a vote, Torka did, Scorn, Slash did, Slag did, Snarl did, Swoop, of course, Blot, Razor Claw, B-Boom, Apache, Injector, Eject, Rewind, Rumble, Waspinator, Laserbeak. Who else here do we have? Cerebros. Cerebros turns into a head. So yes, Cerebros. Kaon. I thought that was an interesting one. Who else? Punch's counterpunch mode. Not his car mode. Specifically his counterpunch mode because it's just another robot. That's not vehicular. I thought that was a fun vote. Skull Cruncher, he turns into like an alligator or a crocodile or whatever. And one more, Transformers Prime Predaking, who of course turns into a dragon. So there was a lot of voting. A lot of them ended up being animal, but not all of them. I mean, Eject, Rewind, for example, were not. Rung got a vote. I really hoped that somebody was going to say Scrounge, because he just turns into a wheel. And while a wheel can roll, it's not really vehicular. So there you have it. We have done it all again. Let me know where your favorites fell on the list, or if your favorites even made the list. I appreciate you guys coming by, giving me some of your extremely valuable time. I do know how important it is to you. If you're in a position to help the channel to grow, you can use the donate link. Check us out on Patreon. See what we offer to you through Teespring. Or, of course, hit the join button right here on YouTube to become a channel member. Don't forget that somehow, some way, each and every single day, man, you right there, you do make a difference. And I look forward to the next time that you and I get together to have another visit, either in the live streams on Thursday nights at the stop motion premieres or the old-fashioned way, baby, right here inside the videos.